I'm Edith, 32 female. I live in a small but comfortable apartment in a city that always feels like it's growing faster than I am. As an architectural drafter, my life revolves around blueprints and precise lines, creating spaces for others to live their dreams. For the past decade, my own dream has been singular: buying a house, not just for me, but for my family. This story is about how the day that dream finally came true turned into the day I realized my family was the one thing I couldn't build my life around. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. It all started with a promise, the kind of foundational myth a family tells itself so often it feels as solid as concrete. The promise was that we were a team. Me, my younger brother John, and our mother, Diana. After my father passed away when I was 18, the three of us became this tight-knit unit, navigating the world together from a cramped two-bedroom apartment that seemed to shrink a little more each year. Mom, who had always been a homemaker, took a part-time job at the local library. I put my college plans on hold for a year to work and help with bills, eventually enrolling in a local community college for my drafting degree. John, 4 years my junior, was the protected one, the one we all agreed needed to focus on his studies and find himself. The dream of a house was born from those cramped quarters. It wasn't just about more space, it was about security. One day, Edith, my mom would say, her voice soft as she looked around our peeling kitchen, "We'll have a little house with a garden. A place of our own. You'll have your own office, John can have a proper room, and I can plant my roses." This dream became my life's blueprint. Every career choice, every saved dollar, every skipped vacation was a brick laid for this future home. I became an architectural drafter because I loved the idea of creating homes, and it paid well enough that the dream felt attainable. John drifted from one interest to another before landing a stable but uninspiring job in tech support. He still lived with us, contributing a token amount for rent that barely covered his share of the groceries. Mom, nearing 60, worked just enough hours at the library to keep herself busy. The financial burden, by silent, mutual agreement, fell squarely on my shoulders. I didn't mind. It was for us. For 10 years, I saved relentlessly. I opened a separate high-yield savings account, and every paycheck, before I even paid my own bills, a significant chunk went straight into the house fund. I shared my progress with them, showing them the rising balance, the tangible proof of our future. Their excitement fueled me. John would talk about setting up a massive gaming system in the basement. Mom would show me pictures of rose bushes she'd bookmarked in gardening magazines. We were a team working toward a shared goal, or so I thought. The apartment we shared was in my name, the lease, the utilities, all of it. It was just easier that way. When I'd first moved out on my own, they were supposed to stay for 6 months. 6 months turned into 9 years. They paid a small, inconsistent amount toward the bills, which I accepted because I knew they didn't earn much. I was the one with the big career, as Mom would proudly tell her friends. What I didn't realize was that my career wasn't just a source of pride for them, it was a resource. The lie wasn't a single, dramatic event. It was a slow-growing mold, spreading in the dark corners of our family dynamic. It was in the way they'd talk about our house, but never offered to contribute more to the fund. It was in the casual way John would buy the latest phone or gaming console while I was patching my old work shoes. It was in the way Mom would sigh about how hard it was to make ends meet on her small income, just as I was about to suggest a more aggressive savings strategy. They made me feel like the family provider, the strong one, the captain of our ship. I wore the title with pride, never stopping to think that the captain is often the most isolated person on board. My best friend, Catherine, was the only one who ever raised a gentle red flag. "Are you sure this is what you want, Eddie?" she asked me once over coffee, after I'd excitedly told her I was just a year away from my down payment goal. A house with them? What about your own life? What about dating, traveling? "This is my life," I said a little defensively. "They're my family, we're doing this together." She dropped it, but the question lingered in the air, a scent I couldn't quite identify. I dismissed it as her not understanding our bond. We were different from other families. We had to be. The final year of saving was the most intense. I took on freelance projects, working late into the night at the small desk crammed into the corner of my bedroom. John would often knock on my door around midnight. "Hey, you still up? Can you keep it down? The keyboard clicking is loud," he'd complain, his voice lazy with sleep. He never asked about the projects or how tired I was. He just saw my work as a minor inconvenience to his rest. Meanwhile, Mom's health became a convenient topic. Minor aches and pains were magnified into serious concerns. "Oh, my back is just killing me today, Edith. I don't know how I'll manage the stairs in a 2-story house," she'd say. I'd then spend hours searching for single-level homes, my search criteria narrowing, the prices rising. It was always something. If it wasn't her back, it was the garden needing to face south, or the neighborhood needing to be within a short, flat walk to a bus stop for her. The house was for us, but the requirements were all theirs. The day I was pre-approved for the mortgage was a day of quiet, personal triumph. I didn't tell them about the final number, only that the bank had said yes. The hunt began in earnest. We went to a few open houses together. It was a disaster. John complained about the room sizes. Mom criticized the kitchen layouts. Nothing was ever quite right. "It's a big decision, sweetie," Mom said, patting my arm. "We can't rush it." But it felt like sabotage. They were pointing out flaws, creating doubts, making the entire process feel impossibly complicated. So I started going to showings alone with just my realtor. And that's when I found it. A beautiful 3-bedroom bungalow on a quiet, tree-lined street. It had a modest but lovely backyard, perfect for Mom's roses. It had a finished basement, perfect for John's gaming setup. And it had a sun-filled room at the front with a large window, a perfect office for me. It was everything we had ever talked about. My heart swelled the moment I walked in. This was it. This was the place our real lives would begin. I put in an offer that day. It was accepted. The entire process from the offer to the closing was a whirlwind of paperwork and stress that I navigated entirely on my own. I gave them updates, of course. "The inspection went well," I'd announce at dinner. They'd nod and smile. "That's nice, dear. The closing date is set for the 15th. They'd say, "Oh, wow, so soon." Their responses were lukewarm, but I chalked it up to them not understanding the complexities of real estate. They were waiting for the finished product. They were waiting for me to hand them the key to our new life. The day of the closing, I was a nervous wreck. I signed what felt like a mountain of documents, my hand cramping. When the lawyer slid the keys across the table, I almost cried. I had done it. After 10 years of sacrifice, our dream was real. I held the keys in my palm, their cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth spreading through my chest. I had built our foundation. Now it was time to bring my family home. The drive from the lawyer's office to my new house was surreal. My house. The words tasted foreign and wonderful. I parked in my own driveway, walked up my own front path, and slid the key into my own front door. The click of the lock turning felt like the sound of my future beginning. The house was empty, echoing with potential. The scent of fresh paint hung in the air, a clean slate. I walked from room to room, my footsteps loud on the hardwood floors, imagining it filled with furniture, with life, with laughter. I imagined Mom in the kitchen, humming as she cooked. I imagined John and his friends in the basement, their cheers from a video game echoing up the stairs. I imagined myself in the sunny front office, drafting plans for other people's homes, finally secure in my own. My first act as a homeowner was to take a picture. I stood on the small front porch, holding the keys up with a grin so wide my cheeks ached. I immediately sent it to the family group chat, which consisted of just me, Mom, and John. "We got it, officially a homeowner. The address is 124 Maple Lane. Come over whenever you're ready. I'll be here all evening, probably just sitting on the floor in disbelief. Can't wait to celebrate with you both." I hit send, my heart thumping with anticipation. I expected an immediate flurry of excited texts, exclamation points, and maybe a call. I pictured them scrambling to get ready, maybe stopping to pick up a bottle of cheap champagne to spray on the new lawn. The first reply came from my mom a few minutes later. "Congratulations, honey, that's wonderful." That was it, no exclamation point. No question about when she was coming, just a calm, almost detached congratulations. It was like I had told her I'd successfully bought a new brand of toothpaste. I frowned at my phone, a small knot of confusion tightening in my stomach. Maybe she was busy at the library. I waited for John's reply. Nothing. The silence in the group chat was deafening. I sent another message. "Place is amazing, you guys are going to love it. The basement is huge, John. And Mom, the backyard gets perfect afternoon sun." Crickets. I tried to shake off the unease. They were probably just wrapping things up at home before coming over. It was a 30-minute drive from our old apartment to the new house. I decided to use the time to explore. I tested light switches, opened and closed cabinets, and ran my hand along the smooth, cool quartz of the kitchen countertop. An hour passed. Then another. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows through the empty rooms. The house, which had felt so full of promise just a few hours ago, now felt vast and achingly empty. My phone remained silent. The family chat was a ghost town. I started to feel a prickle of real worry, mixed with a healthy dose of irritation. Did they not understand what a monumental achievement this was? This wasn't just my victory, it was supposed to be our victory. I had carried the weight of this dream for a decade. The least they could do was show up to celebrate its realization. I called my mom. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey Mom, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. I'm at the house, our house. Let me know when you're on your way." I called John. He picked up on the third ring, his voice loud and distracted. I could hear music and multiple people talking in the background. "Hey, what's up?" he said, his tone casual. "What's up? I'm at the new house. Did you get my texts?" "Oh, yeah, I saw them." "Congrats, that's awesome," he said, the words sounding hollow and rehearsed. Someone in the background shouted his name, followed by a burst of laughter. "Where are you? It sounds like you're at a party," I asked, the knot in my stomach hardening into a rock. Yeah, a few friends just came over to the apartment," he said evasively. "Just a small get-together." My mind stalled, trying to process his words. He was at our apartment, throwing a party. Tonight. On the night I closed on the house we were all supposed to share. It didn't make any sense. "You're having people over now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "But I thought you and Mom were coming here, to celebrate." There was a pause on his end. I heard him mumble something to someone near him. "Look, I can't really talk right now, Edith," he said, his voice dropping. "It's just not a good time. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" "No, it's not okay, John. What is going on? Where is Mom?" I insisted, my voice rising with a mix of anger and hurt. "She's here," he said quickly. "Everyone's here. Look, I gotta go." Before I could say another word, he hung up. I stared at my phone in stunned silence. He hung up on me. My brother, in our shared apartment with our mother, was hosting a party on the same night I got the keys to our supposed dream home. A home I had bought for them. A home they hadn't even bothered to come see. The emptiness of the house pressed in on me, suffocating me. The echo of my own breathing was the only sound. I sank to the floor in the middle of the living room, wrapping my arms around my knees. The beautiful hardwood felt cold and unforgiving. The walls, which had seemed so full of potential, now felt like a cage I had built for myself. Every late night, every sacrificed weekend, every dollar I'd meticulously saved flashed through my mind. I had done it all for them, for a shared dream that, it was becoming terrifyingly clear, I was the only one who actually believed in. The silence wasn't just a lack of celebration, it was a statement. It was a deliberate, calculated absence that spoke volumes more than any argument or explanation ever could. They weren't just running late. They weren't just busy. They had chosen not to be here. They had chosen to be somewhere else together, without me. The foundation of the family lie I had built my life upon was beginning to crack, and I was terrified of what I would find in the fissures. The joy of the day had completely evaporated, replaced by a chilling premonition that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. and that the dream I had worked so hard for was about to become a nightmare. I don't know how long I sat on that floor, but when I finally looked up, the room was bathed in the pale, sterile light of a street lamp filtering through the large picture window. It was completely dark outside. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. For a fleeting, hopeful moment, I thought it might be John calling back to apologize or Mom explaining some wild misunderstanding. It was Catherine. "OMG, did you do it? Are you officially a homeowner?" Her text read, followed by a string of champagne and house emojis. My fingers felt clumsy and slow as I typed back, "Yes, I'm here now." Her reply was instant. "Ah, congratulations. I'm so unbelievably proud of you. When's the party? I'm ready to toast to your amazing accomplishment." Tears pricked my eyes, the genuine, unadulterated. Joy in her message was such a stark contrast to the cold silence from my own family that it physically hurt. "There is no party," I typed. "They're not here." My phone immediately started ringing. I answered, my voice thick. "Hey." "Eddie, what do you mean they're not there? Did something happen?" Catherine's voice was laced with concern. The whole story tumbled out of me. The terse text from my mom, the bizarre phone call with John, the music and voices in the background, the fact that they were together at the apartment without me. I relayed the conversation, my voice cracking with a mix of disbelief and humiliation. "He's throwing a party," she asked, her tone shifting from concern to pure outrage. "Tonight? Are you kidding me?" "That's what it sounded like," I whispered, the shame of it washing over me. "He said, everyone's here." "Everyone except the person who just bought them a house," Catherine finished, her voice dripping with scorn. "Edith, this is not okay. This is incredibly cruel." Talking to her, hearing the situation reflected back at me through her sane, logical perspective, made it feel even more monstrous. I wasn't overreacting. This wasn't a simple miscommunication. This was a deliberate act of exclusion. "What do I do, Kat?" I asked, feeling utterly lost. "Do I go over there, demand an explanation?" "No," she said firmly. "Absolutely not. You will not give them the satisfaction of seeing you broken on what should be one of the happiest days of your life. You stay right where you are. I'm coming to you. Send me the address. I'm leaving now." "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. I'm bringing pizza and a bottle of very expensive champagne that we will drink straight from the bottle. I'll be there in 40 minutes. She hung up before I could protest further. A wave of gratitude so intense it made me dizzy washed over me. While my own family was celebrating without me, my friend was dropping everything to drive across town to sit on a dusty floor with me. While I waited for Catherine, a dark, morbid curiosity took hold of me. John wasn't exactly a social media guru, but he did have an Instagram account he used occasionally. My fingers moved of their own accord, opening the app, my thumb hovering over his profile picture. His account was public. I clicked on his story. My breath caught in my throat. The first video was a sweeping shot of our apartment's small balcony. It was crammed with people, at least a dozen, laughing and holding red plastic cups. String lights, the ones I had bought for our shared living room, were draped over the railing. The caption read, "Celebrating the new balcony view," with a winking emoji. The new balcony view, our third-floor apartment overlooked a parking lot and the back of a grocery store. It wasn't a view you celebrated. It was a joke. A pointed, cruel joke aimed directly at me and my new house. I clicked to the next story. It was a selfie of John with his arms slung around our mom. She was smiling, a wide, genuine smile I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. She was holding a drink, looking happier and more carefree than I had seen her in years. They were surrounded by John's friends, all of them beaming. It was a party, a real party. And my mother was not just present, she was a willing and joyful participant. The final image was the one that shattered me. It was a picture of a cake on our small kitchen table. Written in sloppy blue icing were the words, "Bon voyage, EDITH." Bon voyage, as in goodbye, as in have a nice trip. They weren't planning on coming. Not tonight, not ever. This wasn't a celebration of a balcony view. This was a celebration of my departure. They were celebrating getting the apartment to themselves. The apartment that was in my name. The apartment for which I paid the lion's share of the rent and all the utilities. The apartment I was about to give up so we could all move into the beautiful house I had just bought for us. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The lukewarm responses. The sabotaged house viewings. Mom's endless, impossible list of requirements. John's casual indifference. It was all a lie. They never wanted to move. They never shared my dream. They just wanted me and my income out of the way so they could have my apartment. The dream I had been sold for a decade, the foundation of our family, was a sham designed to get me to finance my own exile. When Catherine arrived, she found me sitting in the exact same spot, my phone clutched in my hand, tears streaming silently down my face. I didn't have to say a word. I just showed her the screen. She looked at the photos, her expression hardening from sympathy to a cold, controlled fury. She scrolled through them slowly, her jaw tight. "Bon voyage, Edith," she read aloud, her voice shaking with rage. "Oh no, 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 these people have no idea who they're dealing with." She took the pizza box and the champagne and set them down on the floor with a thud. She sat next to me, took the phone from my hand, and put her arm around my shoulders. "Okay," she said, her voice low and firm. "We're not just going to be sad. We're going to be smart. You just bought a house. You are a homeowner. You hold all the cards. They just showed you their hand, and it's a pathetic losing one. So we're going to eat this pizza, we are going to drink this entire bottle of champagne, and we are going to make a new blueprint, one that doesn't have them in it." The word blueprint snapped something into focus. I was a drafter. I created plans. I built things from nothing. My family had just demolished the life I thought I was building, but they had made one critical error. They had left the architect standing in the rubble. And I knew, with a certainty that began to burn away the tears, exactly how to build a new structure, one with stronger walls and much, much better locks. The next morning, I woke up on an air mattress that Catherine had insisted on buying from a 24-hour superstore the night before. My head throbbed from the champagne and the emotional exhaustion, but my mind was surprisingly, terrifyingly clear. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my chest, but beneath it, a cold, hard anger was beginning to form. Catherine was right. They had shown me their hand. Now it was time for me to look at my own. After Catherine left for work, leaving me with a thermos of coffee and a stern command to be strategic, I sat down on the floor of my new office and opened my laptop. For the past 10 years, my finances had been inextricably linked with theirs. I paid the bills for the apartment, managed the utilities, and bought most of the groceries. They would occasionally give me cash, $100 from Mom here, $200 from John there, which I would gratefully accept and mentally deduct from their share. It had always felt informal, based on trust. Now, I needed to see just how misplaced that trust had been. I started with the lease on the apartment. It was, as I knew, solely in my name. I was the only person legally responsible for the rent, the person the landlord would contact with any issues. My name was also on the electricity, gas, and internet bills. I had set up automatic payments for all of them years ago from my primary checking account. It was just easier that way. I opened my banking app and began the tedious process of going back, month by month for the last 3 years. I created a spreadsheet, just like I would for a project budget at work. Columns for rent, electricity, gas, internet, and groceries. In another set of columns, I meticulously logged the cash contributions from Diana and John that I could remember and find records of in my deposit history. The picture that emerged was stark and infuriating. Their combined contributions over the last year covered, on average, less than 20% of the total monthly household expenses. The rent alone was $2,200 a month. They were giving me, between the two of them, maybe $500 in a good month. I was subsidizing their lives to the tune of over $2,000 a month, every single month. This wasn't just them not pulling their weight, this was a systematic financial drain. The money I thought was going toward our shared life was actually just funding their comfortable existence at my expense. The bon voyage cake suddenly made a new, more sinister kind of sense. They weren't just celebrating getting the apartment to themselves. They were celebrating the continuation of their subsidized lifestyle, now with me and my pesky expectations out of the picture. They likely assumed I would be too proud or too emotionally devastated to cut them off. They probably imagined I'd just quietly remove my things and continue paying the bills for a few months out of a sense of misplaced duty until they could get things sorted out. My anger solidified into resolve. This wasn't just about emotional betrayal anymore. This was about years of financial exploitation. I kept digging. I remembered that a few years ago, my mom had asked me to add her as an authorized user on one of my credit cards. She declaimed it was for emergencies only. She had her own debit card from her small part-time job, so I hadn't thought much of it. I trusted her. I logged into my credit card account, my fingers trembling slightly. I scrolled through the transaction history, filtering for charges made on her authorized card. It wasn't just emergencies. It was a constant stream of small, seemingly insignificant purchases. Weekly trips to a fancy grocery store I never shopped at, monthly subscriptions to streaming services I didn't use, lunches at cafes with her friends, new clothes from department stores. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Individually, each purchase was small enough to fly under the radar. But added up, it was hundreds of dollars every month. Hundreds of dollars that went straight into the house fund, savings from my paycheck, only to be siphoned back out through this credit card. I was essentially funding the very lifestyle that kept them from needing to save for a house themselves. But the final, crushing discovery came when I looked at John's finances. We had a joint savings account, one we'd opened when he was a teenager so I could help him learn to manage money. It had been mostly dormant for years, with only a few dollars in it. He'd never closed it, and neither had I. Out of a grim sense of needing to see the whole ugly truth, I logged in. The account wasn't dormant. There were regular, monthly transfers coming in from an unknown source, and there were regular, monthly transfers going out to an investment app in his name. I clicked on the incoming transfers and saw the memo line, Diana Mason monthly support. My mother was giving my brother money. I pulled up her bank statements. She had given me the login years ago to help her pay bills online and cross-reference the dates. It was true. Every month, a portion of the emergency money she was charging to my credit card, plus some of her own small income, was being secretly funneled to John. He wasn't a struggling young man barely making ends meet. He was an investor. He had a portfolio. He was building his own wealth while I was building a house for the three of us. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a spontaneous, cruel decision to throw a party. This was a long con, a carefully orchestrated, multi-year plan of financial and emotional manipulation. They had worked together, my mother and my brother, to keep me in the role of the provider, the martyr, the family savior. They'd encouraged my dream of a house because it was the perfect vehicle for my exile. They knew that once I had the house, I would move out, freeing up the apartment for them to live in, almost for free, while I took on a massive mortgage. They had bled me dry, all while smiling to my face and talking about our future. I closed my laptop, the click echoing in the silent house. There was no more confusion, no more grief. There was only a cold, clear path forward. They thought they had won. They thought I was gone. They thought I would just roll over and accept my bon voyage. They had no idea that I had just found the blueprints for their eviction. The game wasn't over. I was just about to make my first move. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in detached efficiency. The emotional storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape of cold, hard clarity. I was no longer a daughter or a sister in this equation. I was a project manager, and my project was the systematic and legal dismantling of the life I had unknowingly built for my mother and brother. My first call was to my landlord. I explained calmly and professionally that due to a significant change in my personal circumstances, I would be terminating my lease. I knew I would have to pay a penalty for breaking it early, a cost I was more than willing to eat. However, I added, my voice steady, I will be vacating immediately. The other occupants of the apartment, Diana and John Mason, are not on the lease agreement. They are my subtenants, and their subtenancy is now terminated. I will be serving them with an official notice to quit. The landlord, a pragmatic man who only cared about his property and his rent payments, was more than accommodating once he understood I would be paying the break lease fee in full. We agreed on a final date, 30 days from now, as required by law. My second call was to a lawyer Catherine had recommended. I laid out the entire situation in a brief, 10-minute consultation. The lease in my name, the lack of any formal rental agreement with my family, the utilities under my name, and my intention to have them vacate the property. He confirmed what I already suspected. As they were not on the lease, they were essentially tenants at will, and with proper notice, I had every right to ask them to leave. He drafted a formal notice to quit, a legally binding document that looked cold, official, and utterly non-negotiable. That evening, I drove to the apartment. I didn't go to confront them. I went to execute the next phase of the plan. I had my own key, and I waited until I was sure they were both out. John usually went to the gym after work, and Mom had her weekly book club on Tuesdays. I parked a block away and watched the apartment, building until I saw her car pull out of the lot. Letting myself into the apartment felt like breaking into a stranger's home. The air was stale with the smell of leftover party food. Red plastic cups were still on the counter. The Bon Voyage EDITH cake, now missing a few slices, sat on the table like a monument to their betrayal. I ignored it all. I walked into the living room and disconnected the router. I packed it along with the modem into my bag. Step 1. Cut off the internet. The bill was in my name. The service was mine to move. Next, I called the utility companies. First, the electricity. "Hello," I said, my voice bright and cheerful. "I'd like to schedule a service transfer. I've moved." I gave them the address of my new house on Maple Lane. I scheduled the transfer for the following morning. I did the same with the gas company. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, the apartment would have no internet, no electricity, and no hot water. My final act was the most symbolic. I gathered my personal belongings, the few clothes I hadn't already moved, my laptop dock, my favorite coffee mug, the books stacked by my bed. I took down the family photos from the walls, the smiling, happy faces a mockery of the truth. I left their pictures, but I took the ones of me, of my dad, of me and Catherine. I was methodically erasing myself from the space. As I was about to leave, my eyes landed on the thermostat. It was a smart thermostat I had installed a few years ago, linked to an app on my phone. An idea, cold and sharp, formed in my mind. I left it. I walked out of that apartment for the last time, leaving the door unlocked. I drove straight to a 24-hour locksmith and had all the locks on my new house on Maple Lane rekeyed. As the locksmith worked under the porch light, drilling out the old cylinders, I felt a profound sense of release. Each turn of his screwdriver was a severance, a cutting of a tie that had bound and choked me for years. When he handed me the new set of keys, they felt different from the ones I'd received at the closing. Those were keys to a house. These were the keys to my life. Back inside my quiet, peaceful house, I executed the final part of the plan. I logged into my bank account and blocked all future transfers to our old joint savings account. I logged into my credit card portal, and with a single, satisfying click, I reported my mother's authorized card as lost stolen and had a new one issued only to me. Her card would be declined the next time she tried to buy her fancy groceries or a latte. Then I opened the smart thermostat app. The temperature in the apartment was a comfortable 70 degrees. I slid the control down to 60, down to 55. I set it to the lowest possible temperature allowed, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I locked the controls with a new password. I taped the formal notice to quit to the front door of the apartment. I took a picture of it with my phone for legal documentation. Finally, I opened our family group chat for the first time since that fateful night. I sent one simple message. Per the notice on your door, you have 30 days to vacate the apartment. The lease is being terminated. The power, gas, and internet have been scheduled for disconnection as the accounts are in my name and I have moved. Please leave the keys on the counter when you depart. Goodbye. I didn't block their numbers. I wanted to see the fallout. I wanted to watch the chaos I had so quietly and efficiently unleashed. I leaned back on my air mattress, in my empty but entirely whole new house, and I waited. It didn't take long. The first message arrived less than an hour after I sent mine. It was from John. A single question mark. I ignored it. A minute later, another message. What is this? This is a joke, right? Silence from me. Then a flurry of texts, each more frantic than the last. Edith, turn the internet back on. I'm in the middle of a game. Why is it so cold in here? I can't change the thermostat. Mom's credit card got declined at the grocery store. What did you do? His panic was a balm on my raw nerves. He wasn't asking if I was okay. He wasn't asking why I was doing this. He was only concerned with the immediate interruption of his comfortable life. The services he had taken for granted were suddenly gone, and he was completely bewildered. Then my mother started. First, a series of missed calls. Then, the texts. Unlike John's frantic messages, hers were dripping with manufactured concern and passive aggression. Edith, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Please call me. Your brother is very upset. We're all worried about you. This isn't like you, Edith. We're family. We need to talk this out. Family? The word was so toxic, it almost made me laugh. They wanted to talk it out now that the lights were off and the money was gone. They hadn't wanted to talk when I was sitting alone on the floor of my empty new house. They hadn't wanted to talk when they were slicing into my Bon Voyage cake. I didn't reply to any of it. I watched the messages pour in, a detached observer watching a predictable chemical reaction. Their confusion turned to anger, then to demands. You can't just kick us out, we have rights, John texted. Edith, you are being incredibly cruel and selfish. After everything we've done for you, my mother wrote. Everything they had done for me. The delusion was so complete, so profound, it was almost impressive. I had spent my entire adult life providing for them, and in their minds, they were the victims. I put my phone on silent and tried to get some sleep. But just after midnight, a sound from outside startled me awake. Headlights washed across the bare walls of my living room, followed by the slam of a car door. Then, a heavy, insistent pounding on my front door. I knew who it was. I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. My mother's car was parked haphazardly at the curb, one wheel on the grass. She and John were standing on my porch, their faces illuminated by the porch light I had left on. They looked furious. The pounding continued, louder this time. Edith, open this door right now. My mother's voice, shrill and commanding, cut through the quiet night. It was the same voice she used when I was a child and had disobeyed her. It was a voice that expected immediate compliance. We know you're in there. Stop hiding, John yelled, rattling the doorknob. I didn't move. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but not from fear. It was from a strange, exhilarating sense of power. They were on the other side of a door I now controlled. They were outside, in the cold, while I was inside my own safe, warm space. The locks I had installed just yesterday suddenly felt like the best investment I had ever made. Edith, I am your mother. You will open this door, she shrieked. I stayed silent, watching them. They looked like strangers, their faces twisted into ugly masks of entitlement and rage. This was who they really were, stripped of the pretense of familial affection. They weren't a loving mother and brother concerned for my welfare. They were disgruntled tenants whose landlord had just cut off their amenities. Then my mom's tone shifted. It was a tactic I knew well, a sudden pivot to emotional blackmail. You can't do this to us, Edith, she called out, her voice now thick with fake tears. We have nowhere to go. You can't keep that house without us. We're a family. You need us. That was the line that broke my silence. You can't keep that house without us. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it. The belief that my success was somehow dependent on them, that the house I had bled for was a communal asset they were entitled to. I walked to the door, my footsteps firm on the wooden floor. I didn't open it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and spoke, my voice low but carrying easily through the door. "No, Diana," I said, using her first name for the first time in my life. "You have it backward. You can't keep my old apartment without me." There was a stunned silence on the other side of the door. "And for the record," I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word, "I don't need you. It turns out I was never the one who needed you. It was always the other way around. You have 30 days. I suggest you spend less time harassing me and more time looking for a new apartment." "You ungrateful little," John started, his voice a low growl. "The police have already been notified of potential harassment at this address," I lied, my voice as cold as the air in their apartment. "If you are not off my property in the next 60 seconds, I will be calling them to report you for trespassing." Another silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in their heads as they processed the threat. They knew I wasn't bluffing. I had already demonstrated a capacity for calculated action they had never imagined I possessed. I heard some furious whispering, and then the sound of footsteps retreating down the path. A car door slammed, an engine roared to life, and the headlights swept across my living room one last time before disappearing down the street. I stood at the door for a long time, the silence of the house settling around me like a comforting blanket. The knock at midnight wasn't the terrifying climax they had intended it to be. It was their last, desperate attempt to reclaim control over me, and it had failed. They had come expecting to find their broken, tearful daughter, the compliant provider who would crumble under pressure. Instead, they had found a homeowner. A stranger. A woman who had finally, irrevocably, changed the locks. The 30 days that followed were a quiet war of attrition. Deanna and John vacillated between desperate, pleading text messages and bitter, angry voicemails. They tried everything in their arsenal. Guilt. "Your father would be so ashamed of you." Feigned medical emergencies. "My back is in spasms from the cold. I need you." And threats of legal action, which I knew were empty. I archived every message and voicemail without responding to a single one. My silence was my most powerful weapon. It drove them mad. Catherine was my rock through it all. She helped me pick out paint colors, assembled flat-pack furniture, and brought over housewarming gifts that filled the empty spaces with warmth. A ridiculously soft blanket, a set of wine glasses, a potted plant for my new office windowsill. "Every new blueprint needs a solid staging," she'd say, turning my professional jargon into a mantra for my new life. With her help, the empty house began to transform into a home that was solely and unapologetically mine. About 2 weeks into their 30-day notice period, I received a frantic call from the landlord of my old apartment. "Edith, I have a problem," he said. "The tenants in 3B are complaining about a strange smell coming from your old unit, and they said they saw what looked like a pile of trash bags accumulating on the balcony." I knew immediately what was happening. Diana and John, unable to get me to pay for a trash service I had canceled, and too lazy or proud to deal with it themselves, were simply letting garbage pile up. "They are not my responsibility," I told the landlord calmly. "As I informed you, they are unauthorized occupants who were given a legal notice to quit. You should probably serve them with their own eviction, notice for property damage, and lease violations." That call seemed to be the final straw for them. The reality that I was not going to swoop in and save them, that their cushy, subsidized life was well and truly over, finally began to sink in. They had to confront the consequences of their own actions, a concept that seemed utterly foreign to them. On the 30th day, I received a final text from my mother. It wasn't angry or pleading. It was just one sentence. "The keys are on the counter." The next day, I hired a professional cleaning and junk removal service to deal with the apartment. I didn't want to set foot in there myself. I wanted a clean break. The service manager called me after they were done. "Ma'am, the place was a disaster," he said. "Food left out, trash everywhere, but we got it all. It's empty and clean now." He also mentioned they had hauled away several pieces of cheap, broken furniture. Apparently, in their haste to move, they had damaged their own belongings. I paid the bill without a second thought. It was the last check I would ever write on their behalf. Life settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. The quiet of my home was a luxury I savored. I hosted a proper housewarming party, filling the rooms with my friends, with laughter, and with the aroma of Catherine's excellent cooking. Standing in the middle of my living room, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for me, I felt a sense of belonging that I had chased my entire life, only to realize it couldn't be found in shared blood, but in shared respect and affection. A few months later, curiosity got the better of me, and I did a little searching online. I found out that my mother had moved into a small, government-subsidized senior living apartment across town. John, according to his social media, had moved into a tiny studio apartment with a roommate. His posts were no longer about new gaming consoles, but were filled with complaints about his roommate, his landlord, and the high cost of living. They had gone from living in a spacious, three-bedroom apartment largely for free to being forced into circumstances dictated by their own, very limited means. They had their bon voyage, just not the one they had envisioned. I never spoke to either of them again. Sometimes, a pang of sadness would hit me, a ghost of the family I thought I had. But then I would look around my beautiful home, at the life I had built not just with money and hard work, but with courage and self-respect. The house on Maple Lane was no longer the symbol of a shared dream. It was my foundation. As the testament to the fact that sometimes, the most important blueprint you can ever draft is the one for your own escape. My name is Edith, and I am the architect of my own life. And my front door is always open, but only to those who deserve to be let in.